Shall we move on to the bit I imagine a lot of people will want to know about?
Yeah.
The equipment, the setup, the bike. Let's start with the bike. What bike was it? What setup was it? How was it spec'd?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying I know I've like sort of, you know, said, oh, it's not all about the flashy kit or whatever, but I still enjoy that. You know, I'm only human. I like the way things look. I like the way things perform. So I went for a Mason.
Do you know what? It's probably a good point to mention that you're not sponsored by anyone.
No.
All of the equipment that you took, excluding one piece of equipment, was stuff that you bought and chose yourself rather than someone giving you something for free. The only thing that you were given was a pair of sunglasses.
Instrumental in the trip. Absolutely instrumental. I'll just go in and say that now. Yeah. So I was a sponsored sunglasses rider.
Jokes aside on that, because you happened to know the person that worked for the brand.
Yeah,
what brand was it?
Valon. Valon was the brand, yeah.
That no one's ever heard of in cycling before.
No, exactly. But after this, going to explode, I'm telling you.
So I guess with that now explained, onto the bike.
Yeah, so I went for a Mason Exposure. Now I'm a bit like you, Jimmy. I'm a dead fan of steel. Like, I really like steel, and I'm
glad that you know that I like steel.
Oh, of course. Everyone in Newcastle knows, don't they? Maybe everyone north of it. Yeah, but no, I love steel, and I chose to. This was the bit of flash kit that I really invested in. You know, was like a bike frame, because I was thinking, you know, this is theoretically the thing that will last a lifetime. You know, so like I say, I got that in the Cycle to Work scheme. I got it as a frame set only because it was brand new at the time. They just released it. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Mason Exposure is their like steel fast far gravel bike. You know, so Bocquet is their aluminium one. Exposure's their steel one. They just brought out the steel version, and so I like snapped a pre-order in, and then they made each one sort of to order. So that took a few months to come, in which time I was like still on my single speed, and then to build it up took another few months. So I actually really only rode this for a couple of weeks before setting off.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was awesome. I mean, like I say, the steel was great to ride, has really wide tyre clearance, so you can fit, I think, 2.35-inch tyres in there. So at the end, I was riding like cross-country mountain bike tyres.
On a 700C wheel?
650. 650. Yeah, so
Were you riding 650s?
Yeah, I was riding 650s.
Oh, my goodness.
Talk about standards, you know?
Wowee.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been a lot easier on a 700.
Oh, people say that. But you've also got to love the way it looks, haven't you? You've got to love the way it looks. But also, you know, like, jokes aside.
What tyres were you running then? So you had 650B Hunt wheels.
So I had 650B Hunt wheels with a dynamo as well.
Yeah.
And I started off with Vittoria Torinos, 1.75s for Europe. They were good, but I was running tubes. I was, for some reason, again, like, I was scared of like new tech. I mean, in terms of, I'll go on to say about this, but like carbon or tubeless, or, you know, I had an inkling that old standards were going to be better, like we talked about, but I didn't go far enough, you know, and I actually chose the wrong things to go old on. So I went tubes, and I was getting, you know, like, they were new tires, so I wasn't getting a load of punctures, but I was getting a few towards the end, and I was thinking, right, I'm actually about to go through some pretty tricky terrain. So I went for some Schwalbe Marathon Mondials at this point, which are like tough as boot leather. And I rode them for 10,000 kilometers, and I got one puncture.
Wow.
Which is unbelievable, you know, and that was like rough riding. So, but they were dead unforgiving, you know, like that is part of it. Like they're not a plush ride. So when I got to Rwanda, sort of like homocycling, I was like, right, I'm gonna treat myself. So I put on another pair of the Vittoria Torinos, Vittoria Torino Dry, I think they were, which rolled pretty quickly. But again, they didn't have I wasn't running them tubeless, and I just got so many punctures. It was a minefield of punctures. I mean, there was a time when I was getting sort of like 5 a day, I think. You know, it was tough. And I was fixing them all, of course, because like you've got a limited amount of tubes. So anyway, at that point, I knew I was going to do a lot of sort of like gravel down in South Africa. So then I ordered, and because it's in South Africa, you can order from online bike shops by that point. So I wasn't having to like ship stuff from Europe or anything like that. So I ordered some a Schwalbe combination of cross-country mountain bike tires, a Racing Ralph and a Racing Ray, I think. So they were 2.25, and I ran those with tubes for a bit. Again, it got an unholy amount of punctures, And then I finally set them up tubeless, like with about 1,000K to go. It was like way too late. It was really funny because when I was doing it, the mechanic at the bike shop was like, I have never seen a back tyre so punctured. Because obviously when you set up tubeless, and you've been puncturing loads, it has to seal all these punctures. And he just goes, did you fix all of these? And I say, it has been a miserable few weeks. Yeah, I did. I fixed all of them. So, yeah.
So you were riding on mountain bike tyres?
Yeah. And I would absolutely recommend it. I thought it was going to be like slow me right down, all this sort of stuff. Like, absolutely didn't. Like, they rolled really quickly on the road. Don't know. I mean, I think they just do roll quickly. These
until you do that trip again on a tyre that isn't a mountain bike tyre.
That's true.
You can't say that.
That is very true. But I had been riding I've been riding these sort of semi-slicks Vittorias 1.75 inch, and they were like, I didn't feel a difference, really. I didn't feel a noticeable difference because your weight is like the system weight on a touring setup is so much higher. You just don't notice these intricacies, you know? They're like, fair enough, they probably accumulate, but like you just don't notice them. So that's another bit of advice is like, just don't get caught up in the small things. Like, just go for like the stuff that's going to do the job as opposed to like, what might just like be a bit quicker. It just doesn't go like that.
The difference as well, Jimmy, and I know this because I was chatting to Jake about whether we could make a graphic to show the full route. And I said, did you record it on Strava? Can we get the GPX files? He said, yeah, most days, but sometimes I just forgot to turn Strava on. And again, that is a difference between a bike packer and a tourer. It's just not so focused on the numbers and the data. Yeah. So do you even know whether you were going faster or not if you're not constantly looking at numbers?
Like, I don't know if I was putting in more power. I actually met a guy out in Mozambique who was he was cycling from Kenya down to South Africa. He's a data analyst from the Netherlands, and he was like bejeweled. He had like everything. Like, he's flashing gizmos, looked like a Christmas tree. He had like, like power meter, heart rate monitor, every radar rear light. That one's actually really good. I can tell you about that. But he had all the data, and I was like, and he was telling me, and I was like, I don't want to know. I do not want to know. He's like, and he was like always looking at the weather. He's like, there's gonna be a headwind at this time, and I was like, it just saps your motivation. Like if you're looking at that every day, I'm like, for me, that just kills my motivation. If I know I'm like suffering through a climb, and then I'm going to be like pedaling into a headwind on the descent, it's going to kill my motivation for that climb. So I just need to like be in that moment and just doing it as and when. But I've never been into my numbers, so that is, I know it's a dying breed in this day and age. But yeah,
I don't know. I think more and more people are, because I'm very much in that camp.
Yeah,
without doing the massive, humongous adventures, I'm just very much I don't care. I have cared. I don't care anymore. It doesn't mean anything. I just want to, if I'm riding my bike, I just want to enjoy riding my bike. And I think there are more and more and more and more people that are doing away with, once upon a time they might have been like, I'm going to go and have a go at that Strava segment. Whereas now they're perhaps just don't care about it.
Exactly.
But it's very refreshing to be around or have this conversation with you, because it's very typical for people that are in their mid-20s that have been riding a bike for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years to just be really serious and really focused on, they just want to race bikes and they just want to be out on their bike all of the time, riding as fast as possible and up hills as quick as they can possibly ride. So it's really nice to see someone that has come through development with bikes, and you see bikes as just a tool for exploring, essentially,
Yeah, well, it was funny actually. The last ride I did of my trip was a bike race. So it was my first, actually my second bike race officially. I did the Grinduro, but that's like, they just time segments of that, don't they? The Grinduro, that's their sort of thing. It's not like a start to finish bike race. So there's not like a pack mentality and like having to, pack riding and group riding and kind of tactical riding in that sense. So I did this gravel race, which is like an 80K gravel race and just outside of Cape Town. And it was like so funny because I rocked up and I was like, again, felt completely out of my depth. I'd never done anything like this, but I'd just done about 9 months of like the most perfect training, like weight training on a bike for 9 months in such consistent riding, such different temperatures and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, I got there and I like stripped off my stuff, and it was the first time I'd ridden my bike unloaded in 9 months. And I was like, wow, like this is what they created this bike for. Like it's a machine. It's so good. So the bike felt amazing. But then, I was complete newbie. Like, I had my tri-bars on because that's where I had my my GPS mount, and I needed the GPS for the route, for the race route. Anyway, like I get there and they're like, well, you can't race with tri-bars, obviously, you know, like there are rules. And I was like, what? So I have to take it off and just zip tie my GPS to my stem, and thinking, okay, well, that'll work. And then I had no bottle cages, you know, because I've been using a bladder. So then I was like stuffing bottles in my jersey, you know. No, well, actually not even my jersey. I didn't have a jersey, obviously. So I was stuffing it in my bib shorts. And then I was racing in a Hawaiian shirt, you know, and like everyone was looking at me like, what the hell? And it was really funny because like we started the race and it was like all quite, you know, serious. And I remember one guy being like, you know, might want to take, I was, you know, with the front group, and they were like, you might want to take it easy on the climbs because then we'll be quicker all together, you know, like if we're, you know, drafting all this sort of stuff. And I didn't know. I thought a race was a race. I thought you just go out there and ride quick, you know. But anyway, and so I was feeling a little bit like, oh, you know, I don't feel like I quite belong here. I was feeling dead nervous. And then we're just riding along, and because it's 80K, you're not pushing it like the whole time. And then we just start to chat, and they were like, oh, are you the guy that's just rocked up from London, you know, like, have you ridden it? And it was great because it was like a great icebreaker. I was like, yes, I've got no idea what I'm doing. Please, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm sure I'm like screwing this whole thing up, you know. But it was a great experience in the end, and like, yeah,
I was. Don't tell me because I'm just going to pretend that this is what happened. What I'm going to pretend happened is that you just rode off the front and you beat everyone by like miles and miles and miles because you were just so fit and you just rode away and won it. And we're just going to leave it by that. You're always going to be the guy that rode to Cape Town and then won a bike race.
That's fantastic. I'll leave it there.
On the bike setup, what group set were you running?
I was running a SRAM Force hydraulic 1x. So that's been on about 3 bikes now for me. I've just switched it between. And it worked great. I mean, I had spares, so I took a spare cassette. I went through 3 cassettes. I did this thing, I mean, like weird, like touring hacks and touring knacks. Things like, I call it the old switcheroo, which is basically like you rotate things. So like, you know, on the drivetrain, you make sure that you run like, for example, a chain for 1,000 kilometers. Then you switch it with a new one. And then you switch it with, after that one's run for 1,000 kilometers, you switch it with a new one. And you run that for 1,000 kilometers, and then you repeat the whole process with the same chains, you know? So instead of running a chain for 3,000 kilometers and then running a new chain from there for 3,000 kilometers and then another one, it basically means that you're
wearing together.
You're wearing together. So it's really intuitive when you think about it because, you know, obviously your components wear based on the stretch of the chain.
Yeah.
But if they're stretching, like essentially what you do is you slow the stretch factor down of the chains that are actually being ridden by 3. So you end up like prolonging the life of your components by like a good while. That's like a good little touring tip.
That's that economics degree coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you rotating cassettes as well?
No, so I just rode a cassette from the beginning to the end. I mean, you could do. I think in the same principle you could do. But I rode just cassettes from like beginning of life to end of life for them until they started skipping, and then I had to put on a new one. But I had, you know, that's why also my bike weighed a bit more at the beginning because like I was carrying a lot of spares with me.
14 chains, 30 cassettes.
Exactly. But you do it with your tyres as well. Like you can switch back to front and things like this. It's great if you've got non-directional tyres because then you can switch, you know, like whichever way you want and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, switching around is a good thing.
I like to argue that all tyres are non-directional.
Oh, well, I think you're probably right, unless they've got these massive chevrons on them, you know.
But still, it's going to be fine.
It will probably roll.
Or perhaps it won't. Maybe I'm just. But
if you haven't got the numbers, then you don't know.
Bags. How did you carry stuff?
Okay, so I had sort of like a bit of a mix between bike packing, bike touring setup. So I had a big frame bag. So I mean, I'm a tall guy. I'm 196 centimeters or 6'5" in sort of old money. So I ride a 62 centimeter frame, which means there's a lot of space in the triangle.
The dream for bike packing.
It's really, honestly, and I mean, I probably could have ridden a 60, but I rode a 62 with a short stem, just literally to maximize the space in the frame. So I had a big frame bag, and then I had, you know, I had a bar bag, I had a tri-bar bag. That was actually a real MVP bag. It was a restrap one that like goes in between your tri-bars. And I can imagine that's really good for racing and things like this because it's actually dead aero. But it's really, that's really useful. And then I had fork packs. So like 2 Ortlieb fork packs and then a tail fin with a tail fin top stay bag. But then I had the alloy arch. So that has mounts on it. Mm-hmm. So then I had 2 more Ortlieb sort of fork packs mounted to the back.
Got you.
So it was like mini panniers and then quite a streamlined sort of centerpiece of bike packing bags.
How did you come to that? Why did you make those decisions?
Good question. I mean, I sourced about 50% of those secondhand and then bought the other ones new. So it was like kind of what was available on eBay and stuff like that. And then also like what I kind of wanted. I mean, I basically went with it. When I was going through with the people who were coming out to join me, like what they should bring, I had basically 5 categories, which were like, I remember the first one was stability. So it's making sure that the whole thing is stable, that it doesn't like, because at the beginning when I started the trip, it was like I had a speed wobble, right? And it was because I had too much weight on the back, and actually you want to put weight to the front. Counterintuitively, you like more weight on the handlebars makes them more stable. I don't know, counterintuitively for me. So stability was one thing, but basically it was all about like, and then it was weight, and then it was accessibility, and then it was aero, and then it was steez. Does it look cool? So I started
You considered aero, but rode monstrous mountain bike tires on 650B wheels.
Yeah, I did. This is why it was number 4, though. But you'll note that Steez was even lower. Steez was like 5, so it didn't matter what it looked like. But yeah, I made the decision based on sort of like stability and accessibility more than anything, and then on weight.
So in the bags, what sort of stuff were you taking? So I'm guessing you had actual camping equipment, or like ultimately, what did you take?
Yeah, so camping setup, so sort of like sleeps.
Actual tent?
Actual tent. I had an actual tent. Had a 2-person tent. I mean, I quote unquote 2-person tent because it's quite tight with 2 people in there. But I had.
But as you said, you are 6 foot 5,000.
Exactly. Yeah, so I did go diagonally. Yeah, sleep mat, sleeping bag, little pillow. In terms of the kit, like in terms of my own bike kit, I literally, like I said, I had 1 pair of bib shorts, and I had like 1 pair of shorts for off the bike, some Crocs. Then it was mostly like food and spares, really. Like I had some water. The one actual luxury I had was an iPad, which I used to write on while I was away. But yeah, other than that, it was like pretty bare bones. By the end, I did do a sort of like slow reduction as I went, though. When people came out, they'd always be sent back with something. It's inevitable.
I hope I know the answer to this question, but we'll see. How much did your setup weigh?
Okay. So I'd say at its absolute maximum, I'm talking like wet and well fed. So like when it's full of water and when you've got all your food, it was pushing 50 kilos, the whole thing.
How many?
50.
Oof. What?
Yeah.
50?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 47 or something, 48, yeah.
Now the rim thing makes sense.
Now the rim thing makes sense, exactly. I will preface that it was still within requirements.
How much do you weigh?
I weigh 77, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. I fluctuate a bit, but yeah. So the thing could be heavy, but that was for by the end. I mean, I think I was running a fairly consistent 40 kg like wet throughout, and then occasionally if I'd have to do a big stint and put like a load of food in my backpack for a stint through the desert where I wasn't going to see anything, then you have like another 5 kgs of food or something like that with you. So
wow,
yeah, it jacks up quickly. Yeah,
and you definitely when you factor that in. Even if you are within weight limits on the wheels that you kept breaking, that is definitely going to be on its limit.
They're stressing exactly, and that's the thing. With tough terrain as well, like it's going to be stressing it. So it's almost no wonder. But there were, like I say, there were some wheels that it was within its weight limit and it broke, and there were some wheels that were within its weight limit and it didn't break, and it's like
Wow, that is way heavier than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But I personally, I didn't mind riding a lot of weight. Like for me, I was like, it's you just get used to it. Like anything, you just get used to it. The thing that it did limit though was obviously the components. Like it does place a lot of strain on your components. So that's the consideration.
What I was hoping you were going to say is I don't know.
Oh no!
And you almost did say that, basically.
Well, I had to figure out though, because obviously when I was like figuring out, like, am I within weight limits? And I was having to be really careful to be really within these weight limits because that was the thing that was failing on me. So I did know, and then there was one point when I had the 3 folks out to join me that there were a lot of roadside scales in Africa, and so like it was in Uganda, we saw like these roadside scales, and we paid a little bit to put our bikes on there, and like we hung them up in order. And they had like 23 kilograms, 26 kilograms, 28 kilograms. Then I'm 45 kilograms, kind of thing. It's just crazy.